we've taken on the challenge of turning this 1980s G-body Porsche 911 from an unfinished project car into a reliable daily driver. Whilst giving the flat six engine a top-end rebuild, I discovered several head studs had sheared and lodged inside the block. Now, having sent the block away to a specialist, they've managed to get all of the remaining studs out, some of which were actually broken, but it only cost me £80. And whilst that was away, I've actually stripped and serviced the heads and checked the valves, valve guides, and I've got to say they're all in great condition too. So it's nowhere near as bad as I thought it could be. But what it has proven to me is that I think it's well worth upgrading these studs. Now, these are not cheap, they're £50 each, and there's a lot of them. However, they're now made of steel, plus they have this crucial plastic coating on the outside. And it's the plastic coating that actually gives us the biggest benefit. That equalises the thermal expansion rate between the stud itself and the alloy block. That means that the two items heat up and cool down at a very similar rate, which means it puts a lot less stress on these, and that means they're a lot less likely to break. All I need to do is get all of these back in, get the heads built up, and then get it back in the car. Once I'm happy everything's sitting perfectly, I can carry on. The next part of the rebuild is to check the camshaft for wear and tear. The good news is, having inspected both camshafts, they're actually both in great condition. There's no signs of excessive wear, there's no discoloration from overheating, so all I've got to do is throw them back in. The heads are torqued to 35 Newton meters. Now I can move on to my next check. Once the engine's out, particularly a high mileage engine like ours, it kind of makes sense to change things like the timing chain, the guides and the tensioners. Now, a chain has a much longer lifespan than a more traditional timing belt. However, we have done 140,000 miles and they do become slack over time. The guides wear away, the tensioners become slack, and gradually this will rattle around, getting noisy, and eventually could even break if left unchecked. For a princely sum of £400, it may not be cheap, but I think it's worth doing. So at this point, I've loosely assembled the timing chain and cam sprocket because I'm going to need to adjust those when it comes to timing up the engine. Once I've rebuilt the other side of the engine, I've got to time up the crankshaft and the camshaft. If they're not completely in sync with each other, the internal components can collide, destroying the engine entirely. The first thing I need to do is find out what position the camshaft is in using this DTI gauge. Dial test indicator, or DTI gauge, goes into cylinder number 1 and measures the height of the inlet valve spring, and that in turn tells me the position of the camshaft. Right, so I'm zeroing the DTI gauge at top dead center, and then I'm going to go one full revolution on the crankshaft until the inlet valve begins to open again. Now we're just round to the top. I can see the DTI gauge moving again. There we go. So now I'm turning the crankshaft pulley until the little mark labelled Z1 lines up perfectly with the centre of the crankcase, and that means I know that my crankshaft is in the perfect position in relation to my camshaft. Almost there. Just got to use these special tools together with my torque wrench to torque up this camshaft bolt, and that'll be an engine that's rebuilt and has many more reliable miles left in it.